Hello, everybody. Welcome to the third roundtable of the 5 GM roundtables that we are holding on Desis&Dragons. Today's session is about building an adventure, whether it's for publication or for your home game. My name is Shubham, pronouns he, him. I'll be the moderator for the day, and I'm going to be joined by a wonderful panel of very exciting creators who are going to be talking about their process building adventures, and I'm going to poke them with a lot of questions, and we'll see what wisdom we can pull out of them. I would like to throw to them so that they can introduce themselves to all of you. Alex, Alika, if I can throw to you, please.
Oh, good. I always get to start this. Great. Hello, everyone. I'm Alika. I've been DMing for, I guess, 5 years. That's my claim to fame. That's it. I have nothing else to say. But yeah, I've been playing for about 6 years, DMing for 5 years, and going strong with campaigns. That's it. Oh, I do illustration and graphic design. Does that count? That probably doesn't.
That counts. I think we should also mention that you have published adventures on DM's Guild and Drive Through RPG. You also did the art for an adventure that Rajiv and I co-wrote. So I think Alika is undermining their claim to fame there.
I actually just forgot about it. I have done art for Unbreakable as well and stuff like that.
There you go. So yes. Alika, just to be sure, could I just get your pronouns, please? I don't know if I have them yet.
Yes, you may use she, her for this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Anurag, if I can throw to you, please. If you could just introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Anurag, and I actually started DMing. I'm an always DM. I'm a proud always DM, and I started DMing last May, and it's been more than a year since I started. I started from I used to love shows like Community and Big Bang Theory just because it showed D&D. And as a normal writer who publishes on Wattpad, I just love storytelling, and that's what basically brought me to D&D. And now I'm think I'm known for putting up an ad for a game every 3 days. So I run a lot of one shots, sometimes for beginners and sometimes for veterans. And I am currently running 3 campaigns simultaneously. 2 more of Annihilation, Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and Curse of Strahd, of course. So yeah, that's me.
You have prolific writers, and then you have prolific game runners, and I feel like Anurag, meets the bar for prolific game runners right there. Sid, if I'm saying that correctly, or please correct me if I'm not. I'm just reading it for the first time right now.
It works. Hi everyone. I'm Syed. Next is on the internet. I've been DMing for about 2 months now. Been playing for almost 2 years. Yeah, I'm a really passionate TTRPG player. For reading books, creating faucets for players to sit around and find out what they can the world. That's me.
Amazing. I also feel like, Seth, we should point out that you have now become our resident welcome bot on the server as you warmly greet everyone who joins the community. And it's always a pleasure to see you kind of making everyone feel really welcome and at home. So thank you for that.
Pleasure.
If I may, I throw to our very own Nick Fury, Shiva. How do you want me to say this? Because I've always gone Shiva, but actually, Shiva. Tell me.
It's spelled Shiva, but like Shiva. I mean, I'm used to all kinds of pronunciation. Hello, everyone. I'm Shiva, one of the mods on DC server. Outside the server, I have published D&D 5e adventure with a lot of help and assistance from Alika, and Alex is just being like super modest by saying, by not pointing out that she is an excellent game designer and an even better game runner. As for myself, I run all sorts of games since 2014. I've been running D&D games, and currently heavily into running D&D games and PBTA games, especially on this server.
Amazing. And then finally, if I may get to Ricky, please. If I could hear from you, please. Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Rigdan, but you can call me Ricky. I've been playing for about 5 years, but DMing for 4. So I have been DMing mostly this one very long campaign that I started during the lockdown, but otherwise I've DM'd one shots in between and a lot of other things, and not much writing experience though. If like my one claim to fame, if I may call it that, is that in my master's dissertation was based on D&D, so something to.
That's awesome.
That is a
life
very
goals.
cool claim to make, right? Amazing.
Yeah.
All right. That's a panel. That's not the wrap of the panel. That's who we are talking to today. First questions. Where do you start? Because that's the toughest part, right? Taking the first step when you're like, okay, I'm going to run a one shot for my friends, or I'm going to start this campaign, or I want to write my first adventure. All of these pose the same challenge. Where do you start with putting together an adventure? I would like to throw this to two people in particular, Anurag and Siva. If I could hear from you guys about how do you go about starting to put together an adventure? Anurag,
Siva, do you want to go first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. And then go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So I usually, at the beginning, I used to just think about D&D as just combat, and that was one of like the initial days where I had no one to teach me, how to DM stuff, and I never went as a player, so I didn't know much about those things. But right now, the way I get ideas are from movies itself. So if I watched the new Doctor Strange movie, I ran a session on the multiverse of madness. People just jump from a universe to universe doing stuff. So once I get the idea, I try to build a story around it. I make a BDEG and give him a reason and build an entire story around it. And then I start looking for maps, descriptions, and puzzles and everything else. And with that, story is formed, and I immediately put up an ad. I have a bunch of really good friends who immediately just turn up for my games, and yeah, I'm lucky that way. So if I need to play test, they're there, and if they want to play, I just immediately cook up a session for like I just need 10 minutes, and I cook up a session, and that's it.
That is very interesting.
Not
Siva,
very
what do you?
not
Yeah.
too dissimilar. Like it always starts from like an idea. We have nothing. I mean, I have nothing uh, planned out or fleshed out, but it's always like I just want to play any RPG, right? Like it's say Mass or um it's D&D or it's Pathfinder, any RPG. It just starts with an idea that, oh, I want to play this. If I know the rules, great. If I don't know the rules, then first thing look up the rules. And sometimes while reading the rules or while just looking through the game system, I'll get some inspiration. So I would always like, if it's a familiar system like D&D, then I probably won't go back to the rules. Then I'll just start with the story idea. But if it's not a very familiar system to me, I will, like, while reading the rules, I will get an idea that, oh, this monster looks crazy. Let's build an adventure around this monster. Or, this magic item looks cool. Let's build an adventure around this. So just starting with like the system itself, it just kickstarts some creative spark somewhere. And then we go from there.
I think those both are very fascinating approaches. I just want to throw it to the rest of the floor if anyone has anything else they would like to add. But how do you start with building an adventure?
Adding up on what Anurag and Siva said, I think my biggest inspiration has been art and books. Picking up there's ton of art out there in the internet, and picking up inspiration from that and then building stories around it. As that's my creative spark. That's where I have found most of the plot hooks and adventure hooks for my games. I run a lot of one shots, and I used to say those have been the quickest way to find an inspiration. Next comes the rule setting and getting a feel for the system itself. But that is what inspires stories for me.
Right. I mean, I can certainly see that working. I think I particularly resonate with. It's weird that I resonate with all of these, which means that in a way, all of these are completely viable approaches to starting an adventure. Either have a look at the rules, have a look at something that's inspiring, and you want to recreate. And we even talked about a bit about this last in yesterday's panel about how do you find the right system. And it's like, well, what do you want to create, and then you can go from there. So I think that even applies to adventures. If Ricky or Alex, unless you have anything to add over there, I am happy to move on to the next question.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, it's generally like I have a very similar process in terms of coming up with an idea. I just think that the idea that you come up with, right, doesn't have to be big or it doesn't have to be serious. Like the first one shot I ever ran, I just wanted to make a very bad fun with my friends. So the the sessions basically was built around this one joke I wanted to make, and so then it expanded from there. So all I'm saying is like sometimes we tend to disregard ideas because we think that it's not good enough or it may not end up being well liked. But as long as you go and explore things that you find interesting, or you just want to do it for the fuck of it, right? As long as you explore those ideas well, I think there is a space for exploration of any sort of idea in, like, when you start off writing something.
Agreed, 100%. All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar.
I'll go. Thanks. Alika, please.
Oh, sorry. I'm getting a bit of a lag. But yeah, I mean, it's similar for me. Either I start off with a monster or an idea. I remember writing a one shot, which I just decided the idea came from a very simple quote online. It's not even a quote, it's one of those like all the letters of the alphabet in one sentence. It was Sphinx of Black Quartz, judge my vow. And I was like, that's very metal. I should make that into an adventure, and that's just how I went for it. So you can just like find inspiration in like the most random places to build a one-shot adventure. For things like campaigns and stuff, obviously I would go and ask my players first, like, what do you guys want to see? What kind of adventure do you guys want to play? And then based on that, sit and kind of like build either outwards or build inwards the world. So yeah,
That does
get
bring us to
inspiration from your
a next question, which is actually kind of a very good segue at this point. What is the difference between creating a adventure for a one shot and creating one for a campaign? And I'd like to, Alika, in fact, because you already mentioned it, getting player input, maybe you can carry on and tell us more about how do you separate the two processes?
Well, for one shot, um, usually if I run a one shot, I have an idea in mind and then I just kind of like put it out and then whoever wants to join in does join in. But for a campaign, it's kind of like I'm going to be playing this long-term adventure with a bunch of people. We better all have fun with it. If we are not going to have fun, it's not going to, it's not going to last very long. So main thing is for me for planning a campaign is like get your player input first. Ask them what kind of themes they want to explore. Do they have any preferences? Like, do they want to go plane hopping? I'm talking about D&D mostly because that's my most run system. Like, do they want to go plane hopping? Do they want to do a political kind of campaign or something like that? And then, I'm sure players end up writing backstories, even if it's one line or if it's a paragraph or 5 pages or 10. They'll always provide you a lot of great input. And then from that, that's how I start building a campaign. Using all the player input that I can get, and then from there deciding the themes that we want to see, and then kind of just taking that along. And then for one
Anurag,
shot, it's like come up with an idea and then just ask people, hey, does this sound fun? Do you want to play this? Let's do that.
interesting. Anurag, is that the same for you? Because, like you said, you're running about 2-3 campaigns and then a lot of one shots. Is the process similar, or do you do things differently?
what I usually think do is like my campaigns are all module based, but I just like to add a few of my touches into them as well. But the thing about campaigns and one shots for me is one shots like they're called one shots. They have to be short. We can't actually keep it going for more than maybe 3 or 4 sessions. Um, what I usually do is I come up with a proper villain and an entire story to fit it within the specified 4 or 5 hours. That's usually how long my sessions run. And as for campaigns, I tend to take my sweet time to introduce the villain and everyone, except for Curse of Strahd, where Strahd just appeared in the third session itself. But yeah, that's I think about me. Yeah, that's it.
Fair
Can I
enough.
jump
Fair
in
enough.
on that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So yeah, like it's the process for preparing for a one shot and for a campaign slightly different, but they're not they're not at two different levels. Like the amount of preparation that you put into a one shot would probably be the same as the amount that you put into the campaign. Like Alex said, that a campaign would involve more player collaboration. A one shot is usually where you just have an idea and you say, oh, I have this idea, I want to try this system, I want to try, lasers and feelings. Can we just play a one shot around that? I want to play Lancer. Can we just play a one shot around that? I have this idea and you want to go for it. But when you actually like start preparing for the one shot, or when you start preparing for the campaign, it comes down to the same kind of processes. You're just like what Anurag said, you're still like figuring out like one central story, you're figuring out one character, one villain, or something to challenge your players, and that will filter through whether you're doing a campaign or whether you're doing a one shot. So the preparation level would still be the same. As you get more experienced, obviously, like you would not put in that much to prepare for a one shot, probably, as much as you do in the campaign. But if you're just like starting out, I'm guessing that it doesn't make a difference whether you're starting out a campaign or starting out a one shot. But yes, player collaboration for sure in a campaign, because you all want to have fun in that shared universe. Yeah.
I completely agree. Does anyone have anything they would like to add on top of that? I'll open this one up to the floor now.
Here's what, having run a lot of one shots, is what I have learned. One shots take a lot more preparation. That's what I thought initially. It's because it's just a very small time that need to achieve something, that the players need to achieve something while also having fun. That's where the problem comes. There's a lot of things. You got to make sure they have they go from one point to another point. It's not too railroady. They're not tackling them to go somewhere. Well, it's a difficult balance. My take as a DM initially for running one shots was I prepped a lot, and here's what I learned: not over prepare. Your players are always going to do something that you're not going to expect them to. So improv. Um, let them explore and spin the story in such a way that it comes back to the point where they need to come. That they need to meet this NPC and they're going a different direction. Put the NPC where they are going. It works. Also, do not hesitate to leave a one shot on a cliffhanger. I learned
That's
that.
the easiest way to convert your one shot into a campaign, right?
Yes, and
Not
my players
into
have
a,
loved it. All my
I mean,
players
not
have
into a
loved it.
campaign, but I once, had my players fight Cthulhu himself, and basically left the whole one shot on the cliffhanger, saying that the Cthulhu they defeated was an illusion, and the real Cthulhu was just stepping on them, and that's where the session
Yes,
ended.
yes, absolutely. That's the most beautiful part. You're on a cliffhanger, let the players simmer in that
Exactly.
doubt if they were succeeded.
I would like to quickly interject it. There's something interesting that was brought up here is that there's a particular challenge with one shots, or if you are Syed or Anurag, turning one shots into sneaky campaigns. That is about not railroading, but at the same time keeping a healthy pace, right? You can't have players wandering too much because otherwise you'll never get to the end of this a particular mystery. So it's a very contained sandbox. There was one thing that I had already said, which is about perhaps setting up specific reveals that can happen anyway, so that the story keeps moving forward. But does anyone else have any other tools that they use to keep adventures moving? This, it's essentially about, like, there's a quest and the players are starting to wander a bit. How do you get them back on track? What's a good way to? Yeah,
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, Ricky, go on.
Ricky, tell
Oh,
us.
sorry. So I had sort of like not a counterpoint exactly, but so one thing I've learned over time while running one shots or campaigns is to listen when they're role playing, because what happens is we have a story, especially in one shots, right? We have with this mindset, all right, we need to, because it's a contained story within, we have to finish in one session. These are the things we need to hit, boom, 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 and that's how we move forward, and we have to finish the story. But I have learned, and as a person who is constantly has its one shot spill into 2 or 3 sessions minimum, but it's a lot more enjoyable for your players if you pull the threads that they put into place, right? So when you're listening, when I allow a lot of role play in my games, in character role play, but when they start to figure something out, right, it may be something completely different from what you have planned, so to speak. But that feeling of them figuring it out, they are getting a lot of joy out of their solving of this mystery, right? So there has been a point where I've completely changed the basically who the bad guy was, because the way they solved it, like, was through actually good deduction and, like, things that I hadn't foreseen. So it's important to reward your players in that manner also, I feel in the sense that obviously there are times when it can get a bit rambly, so you need to have like some sort of trigger ready. Like for me, it's usually, oh, an assassin has arrived, or like, oh my god, you have suddenly been attacked, or an earthquake strike, something that pushes the characters into action. But more often, I like to let them just talk it out amongst themselves, because the hooks that they come up with are the hooks that they are invested in, right, rather than the hooks that you are trying to get them on. And sometimes that can lead to a more fulfilling session for everyone involved.
I
So
can.
when I
Yeah.
first, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, please tell us.
Yeah. So no, I was just building on the same point that when I first started out, I took a module and I actually seen a live play version of it on YouTube, and they did it in 3 hours. I was like, yeah, piece of cake, I can do this in 3 hours. It went for 6 hours and it didn't finish. That's when I first realized that okay, time management is a thing, and you need to be like okay to drop your ideas, like what Ricky said, and just allow the players to have their fun. If you want like something to happen, like if you definitely want some triggering event to push them to action, just keep a timer on the side. Say that like at the 2 hour mark this event is going to happen. Just keep a clock. You know that if your session is scheduled for 3 hours and you know that the last 1 hour you want something specific to happen, just keep aside that time so that and you just keep a watch on the clock for that. Till that time, let the players um, do what interests them. And if you need to cut out parts of your one shot, if you need to cut out parts of your adventure, what you've planned, it's fine. Like they won't even know that you had it in your pocket. And another DM tip: if you cut out anything, just save it for later, because if you're running a campaign, you can always bring that monster back at some other time. So, and you have everything ready and prepped to go.
Definitely, nothing seems to ever go into the bin. It's just used to recycle. Yes,
Yeah,
Anurag.
can I say something? Yeah. So usually, what I do is I have my components of the entire one shot ready. I don't exactly put them in a particular order. For example, when I recently ran a treasure hunt, like hunt for El Dorado style chilled adventure, I introduced them to a gargantuan statue of Upteo, which they animated and asked him to throw them towards a mountain, just so that they can get there faster. Nothing I would ever expect in my entire gaming life, but yeah. So for things like that, I usually choose to improvise my games. That means I have a basic story in mind and I have the basic components in mind. and the rest of it, I don't have a plan for it at all. I just go with what they're planning, and I just do something to challenge them.
I want to kind of ask a question over here, because one of the things, like, you guys have talked a lot about how you can improvise in the in the middle of a session, or you can save something for later, or you don't need to railroad the players, you can surprise them. But there's also the matter of player expectation and then DM expectations. And yes, you might say, if you're posting it on game announcements, you might post like a little brief description of what the adventure is about. But you can't outline everything, because that would take away the fun. So how does session 0 come into this? Do you guys use it for, say, one shots? If you don't have a separate session 0, how do you just make sure that that there's some like agreed upon middle ground where everyone knows what kind of they're signing up for? Because at least for a campaign you can have a session 0, but how does it differ when you're using it for an adventure? If this is open to anyone, if anyone wants to chime in, I'm curious to hear from all of you on this.
Yeah, if no one
Anurag,
is
you wanna go
going, yeah, Syed, if you're going,
Wanna go?
please go.
Okay, so for one shots, what I've tried and tested method that I found really, really good and perfect is the day ahead of the session, before the session, bring in all the players and uh, tell them what they're going to be expecting in this one shot, what they should be expecting, what they need to be doing, or to say in the test is set some rules that this is how it's going to be run. We're going to do this for these many hours, so that everyone is on the same page, and no one has to cut down their fun time, because one shots do tend to take longer hours at times. Also taking in the lines and veils, that should be the most important thing, even when you're running one shots. Do not forget to take your players lines and veils. And also, another important thing that I have found is uh, take inputs from players. If they are expecting something from this one shot, take that in, find a way to incorporate it. Not all of it is going to be incorporated into the storyline, but tidbits, a reference to it.
I would also add, like, it's always helpful to, like, just set the theme of your one shot in advance, just so that players know what they're expecting. You don't have to do spoilers. You don't have to give up the big reveal or anything, but you can just set the theme. You can, like, say that this is going to be horror fantasy, or you can and share some content warnings. You can also, like, take inputs from your players if that's the if your inspiration to run the one shot is player driven. Like, a few players approached you and they said, we want to run this. Can you run this game for us? You can take inputs from them, like, what kind of theme they want, what ideas they want to explore. The story is yours. As a DM, you have full control on the story. You decide the direction in which the river runs. So,
Yeah,
but taking ideas,
definitely.
taking themes, will only enhance the experience.
Yeah, exactly. So usually, yeah, go on, Ricky.
No, please go ahead. I can continue after you.
Yeah. All right. So usually for my games, for my one shots, I usually don't have any session zeros, because some of my one shots are just I just announce them 10 minutes before, and a few of my friends just join. But for campaigns, my session zeros are usually just explaining the rules of the game, like how they can create their characters, about PvP, and every other like a few other details about what the campaign is about, what they could expect, and everything. But as for what kind of as for one shots, I just let them go wild with their characters. I get them let them be as creative as possible, and I just like to see them test their limits. And I like to have my fun with bringing out even scarier monsters. They are usually for one of my horror games I played. I ran a house full of mimics, and yeah, that's what happened. Like I just improvised the entire one shot, and on the spot, and people had their fun because they knew it was an horror campaign. They knew what to expect, and yeah, that's about it.
I mean, I think that's.
Uh,
Sorry, Ricky, you had something to add. Please tell
yeah,
us.
I'm so sorry. No, I just want adding on to what Shiva and Anurag have been saying. I think the one thing that is very important for a DM to make show the players know is the tone that the one shot slash campaign is going to take, because that is the thing that I've seen the most divide on in terms of where friction arises. Because when you define what your one shot is going to be, even those short sentence, you get a basic idea of what sort of game it's going to be in terms of, like, oh, is it going to be Save the Princess, is it like some sort of adventure party. And you can obviously have, like, you can tell them the genre, like Shiva was saying, the theme broadly. But it's also important for them to understand, or for the DM to make them understand and see what the players are also comfortable with, is the tone, right? Because if it's very jarring for a player expecting a very serious role play heavy game to be to then have to deal with a lot of, like, maybe not as serious moments with a lot of, like, humor thrown about, and which might be okay in a general sense, but that is not what they signed up for, right? So I think the tone, more than anything else, is the one thing that the game master has to make sure that they like make the players understand the nature of what the nature of that is going to be like. I think if that is a success, the rest is can be worked around. But that is the one thing that creates the most friction, at least I have seen, in terms of, like, the player DM relationship.
Definitely. I have a question to move on to, which I would really like to dig into. Alex, if I could ask you to lead this one. There's obviously a difference between writing an adventure for yourself, that you're going to just run for a few friends, and one that you're going to publish, and then some other GM is going to run for strangers. So, could you speak about how do the two different approaches work? And if you're saying something
Sure.
right now, I can't
Because
hear
when
you.
I
Okay,
write
there you
adventures for myself, I don't put. There's a bit of lag. Yes. The thing about writing adventures for myself, I never write it down. That is a problem. But yeah, for writing for yourself, it's just like I usually just make points on, like, scraps of paper, notebook apps, or whatever. But obviously, that's not how you're going to write for others, because when you are publishing an adventure, you have to make it easy to understand and accessible for anyone to, like, just pick it up and give it a quick read through and be able to run it. So you have to be a little bit, like, more explanatory. Like, you have to explain things very clearly when you're writing for, like, the public. And you have to be a little bit more straightforward about what you want, what you plan this adventure to be like, what is the end result of the adventure, what you expect the people to get out of it. Also, yeah, you have to be a little bit, like, clear about it, because not everyone's going to always pick up on things that are obvious to you. This may be because of, people coming from different cultures or having different experiences, so they're going to, like, you have to be, like, super uh, clear about, like, any in jokes that you usually would just put in, like, your normal campaign with your friends or whatever. You have to be a bit more obvious about the things that you want to portray in the adventure. Um, yeah, and you have to format it nicely so that people can go and find out what they need to find out from different parts of the adventure. Like, because I attended the RPG writing workshop that was held by the Storytelling Collective. It was really good because it gave, like, a really nice format for how to write an adventure for others, which involved things like, you know, making a table of contents, having headings and things which, are easily clickable and accessible, having a storyline which is not, like, super convoluted, especially if you're writing a one shot, and just basic things like that. So yeah, writing a campaign for myself, it's like, it's pretty much, I find something interesting off the internet, and I, like a magpie, I just kind of, like, put it in a little box of random treasures and just, like, pick at it at some point. There is, for me at least, there is no structure when I'm writing a campaign for myself.
Definitely. Would others like to speak about this on writing for yourself as opposed to writing for publishing?
I mean, I did the same course with Alex, and a shout out to them. It's like a great course for anybody who's interested in writing. Please go check out Storytelling Collective. And the first thing that we were like told there is when you're publishing an adventure, you're not writing for the players who are going to be playing that adventure. You're writing it for the GM who's going to be running the adventure. So upfront, tell your story. Put a summary, say that this XYZ plot, arc 1, arc 2, arc 3, this is going to happen. If there's a plot twist, mention it right in the front. Because the person who's going to be reading the adventure and going to be like actually spending time creating an experience for running this adventure is not the players, it's the GM. So you are writing, your target is not, you're not looking at what the players experience are. You're looking at providing all the information possible to the GM so that they can craft another experience for their players. So yeah, biggest takeaway, like biggest difference in writing an adventure for publishing would definitely be to like just straight up say everything upfront. Or don't hide any plot twist for later. Don't wait for an aha moment. Let the GM have that. And if you're writing it for yourself or writing it so that you run a game for yourself, then for sure, yes, you can keep the plot twist later. You can keep you can throw breadcrumbs as the adventure goes along, but not when you're writing it for publishing.
Definitely. Does anyone else want to chime in? Going once. Okay. I actually, everyone who's listening, I suggest you grab your notebooks because the next question I want to ask is a very, based in kind of like, here's what you can go do. So the question I'm curious about getting answers to is, what resources do you all use when building adventures, whether it's home game or publishing, right? Like, Anurag, you said that you'll watch a show and then you'll find puzzles and you'll find inspiration and BBGs that you can use and build around it. And Alex, you said about how you'll put something and store it like a magpie. So what are these resources that we can use if we want to build an adventure? If there are links, please just say the site names and we'll try to drop them in the chat for everyone else to grab and bookmark.
Okay.
I will say
Yeah, all right.
sorry. I have a very quick resource. I will say the biggest thing that I require when I want to run an adventure is a name generator. Guys, just get a name generator open on the site because your players will ask you, what is this random farmer's name that you did not think about? And it's difficult for me, at least personally, to come up with a name that doesn't sound like weird up front. So nowadays I've just got like a name generator open on the site. It's my favorite tool ever.
I'll do you one better.
Yeah.
I have found this app on Play Store called RPG Generator. It not just generates name, but everything, right from stores to magic items to places to food. If you're in a tavern and they're asking, okay, what do the tavern has to offer us? Just open this app and you can have a list of food items available for your players. But that app is such a thing.
Amazing.
So yeah, the resources that first of all I like to definitely I second you with that. People tend to ask the most random names ever. So it really gets annoying at times. So I just add a bunch of syllables together to create a name. That's what my fantasy generator is. But as for the resources that I use, like one main resource that I usually use for my stories and sessions is other movies and shows that I watch. Some YouTube songs. My favorite is Cami Cat. Her songs just gave me some ideas for some really good sessions that I ran. And the other one more generator that I usually use is called Donjon. So it generates almost everything. You have fantasy world generator, fantasy city generator. It basically generates an entire dungeon for you with all the. That's an amazing resource. Should I put up the link or just tell you the name?
I think we got that right. DONJON. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the one.
yeah, DONJON. Yeah, just type out Donjon 5e and you'll just find it. It's an
Yeah.
amazing resource and yeah, definitely worth trying it out. You'll find even DN. You'll find things for DND 5e, DND 4e, and as well as Pathfinder. And yeah,
Amazing.
that's one more resource. And as for my maps, I usually Google my maps or just find them on Instagram. Or for some things, I just draw my maps on Incarnate. So I just have a account there, so I can just draw a few maps and just have it. And maybe even I actually don't remember the name right now, but yeah, those are some of those resources that I use. And also Owlbear, yes, of course, Owlbear.
Albert Rodeo. Yep.
Yep.
Ricky, did you have any that you wanted to add?
Yeah, this is going to sound so low tech after going through all of yours, but something like two places that have really helped me is basically Reddit. First of all, like so if I'm stuck with what to do next, so just go to Reddit, look up like adventure prompts, and you just need that one idea to click for your for your idea to hit. Another resource that I really like is on Instagram there are a lot of pages that make homebrew magical items, etc., right? Like one of my personal favorite is the Griffin saddlebag.
Yeah.
So yeah, because they are really nicely made, plus they have really good artwork attached. So Anorak earlier mentioned, like a lot of times your prep for a game might just be, oh, that looks cool, right? And then you build things around them. So that can come from these pages have generally, you're just scrolling through Instagram because that's what we do generally. Or is it just me? That'd be really sad. But you just come across this really cool looking thing and you're like, oh shit, this could be the next plot hook, or because it's not an active search sort of thing, so it just allows ideas to come naturally to you, uh, at least in my experience. And also a very underrated thing is the monster manual. I love the monster manual. I just like that is the one. I might be outing myself a little bit, but that is the only source book that I've read fully from front to back, right? So when you just go through the monster manual, you just look at all of these cool monsters and you just feel like, okay, this is the thing that I want to build around. Because honestly, those are some of the coolest parts of D&D, right? I mean, other than the role playing and everything else like that. But yeah, those are very basic things that I use.
Amazing. Siva, did you have anything to add? Are you good? Resources that you use?
I want to shout out my favorite note-taking app, Notion. I love it.
Yes.
Nobody can change my mind on it. It's just inspiration strikes at any time. You never know. You just you hear something on TV, or you're watching a video. You're like, oh, that sounds cool. I want to make an adventure on that. Usually, it doesn't this idea will disappear after a while. But if you just scribble it down somewhere, my go-to is Notion, but you can very well use Google Docs as an alternative. Just have a doc open on your phone or on any gadget that's available, or even a plain old journal. That's always handy. Just write down your notes. Just write down the ideas. You can always build on them later. I have separate pages on Notion, which is just ideas for one shot, which I've never run so far. But if I ever need to, I can always go back there and see, what ideas I've come up with. They're there. You have the building blocks already.
Amazing. All right, so we have the resources, and we've talked about how it's different to write for an adventure at home as opposed to an adventure for being published. We even talked about online tools. Let's talk about what does an adventure actually need to be called a full-fledged adventure, right? Every story has a beginning, middle, and an end. What are some things that an adventure needs so that you've created something that's a fully rounded piece, right? I just to change things up, Ricky, do you want to take this first? Maybe something in your thesis can help us with this one.
Oh, not sure if my thesis would be useful here more around the pandemic and how D&D helped us, but so I think like so like you said, right, there's a beginning and end and a middle in writing any adventure. Uh, like starting the most important thing for me while building an adventure, I think, is the hook. Now, the hook can arise naturally out of your player's role playing, or you have something planned. But having something planned is always the first step because that's what you build it around, right? Then comes the beginning and the end. So, with beginnings, so you can do a lot of things. Like in the chat, I saw somewhere like you have. What you call the tavern opening, so to speak, right? So that's a very classic opening you can do. I have shifted personally to so usually how I prefer the you have been summoned because of your abilities opening, so to speak, where you every one of the characters arrives at a certain place because they see an ad in a tavern, or they have been called for the specific skills. So that allows for a little bit of leeway for the characters to make their own reasons as to why they're here, rather than like, oh, you all ended up at a tavern. There's still a common thread as to why your characters need to be there, but it also gives them enough of an opportunity to mold that reason to fit their own fit their own character. And obviously you need to have the once that plot hook is in, you have to know what that plot hook is leading to, right? Now with this I'm slightly uh, conflicted because having a ending in mind is a very important thing as a GM, I think, because it's like you don't want to be JJ Abrams, right? You don't want your players to be stuck in like the mind box, right, where the mystery is the most important thing. No, because it's the satisfaction of solving that mystery which is the biggest draw for the players, or like at least like I personally think that it is that satisfaction that is the great reward rather than the mystery itself. But I always, like, for me, I have also tended to sort of not have that because again, like, trying to anticipate what your players will do when it comes to, like, say, the final conflict or the final boss fight is something of a fool's errand. So when I plan my adventures, I plan it till the final battle, so to speak, but I don't plan what happens after that, because your player's actions could honestly affect and change your ending in a very different manner. But again, if it's something where you have to show it to someone else, or you are showing an adventure to run to someone else, I would say that having an ending planned out is also a very important thing. But again, like I think there are better
So,
people than me here to
it's
like
so
talk about
interesting
this.
because it's so interesting because I take the exact opposite approach.
Tell us.
The ending of any adventure that I plan is mine. Like the start, I take from the players. I will like ask them if they have a backstory. I will like tie in whatever hook I need to tie into their backstories, because obviously the players have come up with the backstory. I'm not going to ignore that. So if there's a way of, I listen to the player's backstory in advance, not in the session. And this is like in any system, right? Not just D&D, like any system. When players make character creation, they also like come up with their own backstory. Nobody does character creation purely mechanically. So you draw inspiration from those backstories and you try and like find like something to connect everybody. And then the players give you the start of the session. The middle of the session is a little collaborative. I have some things in mind. I have some ideas, but I will also take inspiration from where my players want to go. So if I put a challenge in front of them, I'll leave it up to them how they want to deal with it. They can deal with it in an aggressive way, or in a passive way, or in a non-confrontational way. That's up to them. So the middle is collaborative, but the end is mine because I want them to be in a particular place. I have that part like fully fleshed out. I know how the adventure is going to end. Not in a railroady sense. Like it could be that a typical adventure would end with a villain or a BBG at the end, and they could either fight the BBG or not fight the BBG. That's their choice. They could, they could be successful. They could not be successful. They could run away. Like all those options are open, but that the motivations for the villain I know in advance. What the villain has been doing, I know in advance. So that part is mine. But the first, I will let the players uh, integrate themselves into the story. So I'll give you the start. You have the middle, but the end is mine. That's my approach to.
Adding to
I'll
Siva's point,
Mhm.
uh, for campaigns as a whole, I have multiple lines that I have in mind, but I do not set anything in stone. Like Siva said, the initial part, taking in backstories from players and then generating a common thread point that weaves in all the characters together, letting them find each other. I'm a big fan of found family trope. So that it's a beautiful thing in TTRPG. So showing the players a way to have that, and then dropping in certain plot points or threads that they can then follow, and then developing from there. I think that's a neat way to create your own beautiful ending, because you don't know what your players would pick up. They might be following one thread at a point, and suddenly they are presented with another better plot hook, and they start following that. So just a balance between those two.
Does anyone else want to add anything before I move on to one of our last questions for the day? All right. Alex, were you going to say something?
I was going to say that this is because I've learned it from my major mistakes that I've made while running a campaign. But just generally speaking, at least for D&D campaigns, what I found kind of works well is that if you have like a story plot hook, which like a set story for like the beginning of the campaign, like it doesn't necessarily, it's the story which kind of gathers your players together, whether it's in a tavern or whatever, like a short story which just like gets them to work together. And then after that, you sort of explore their backstories and stuff through their separate quests, and the end of the campaign is where I usually bring out the BBEG, which may or may not always be connected to all their backstories, but usually is in some point. But by then, like they've played enough so that they have like those connections to the world, so they are invested in it. That was just my structure, which I find works best for like a long-term campaign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think something that I'm picking up today is that there's many different approaches for sure, and really depending on what you want to try achieve with the experience, you will start with different things. For those who kind of really need a grand climax where your players feel rewarded, they might want to start with the ending. But for others, it might be about creating a specific tone and then letting the players wander and find their way as they go along. And all of these are perfectly valid but very interesting approaches. Um, all right, I wanna move on to our last question essentially, and then we'll see if there's some audience questions we can field. But at least with D&D, but other systems as well, there are three core pillars that are often talked about. There's role play, exploration, combat. When writing an adventure, or even writing one for your home game or anything, which are the ones that you tend to prioritize? Is it all three, one of the two, and what's your reasoning behind that?
Uh, Hello.
Yeah, tell us.
Yeah. So initially, when I started playing D&D, I used to think that D&D was all combat. So when I started my first homebrew campaign, which was one of my first mistakes in D&D, I never looked into the lore, never looked into the story or the roleplay part. I just had dungeon crawls all over, and I obviously had to, stop that whole campaign right there. So right now, when I look into D&D, the main during my campaigns, the main thing I look for is roleplay and then exploration, and if there is time, combat. Otherwise, unless my players go and provoke people, I usually don't put in combat. And as for one shots, I plan everything out. For like first would be like they need to have their role play, then go explore, and finally fight the BPEG. Like unless they I'm just doing a random dungeon call. Yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, I agree with that mostly. Like for one shot, I'd always try to include all three pillars of the of D&D into an adventure. Have at least one role play scenario where characters can find out what's happening, or make an ally, or make an enemy. Have an exploration scenario, and then usually end with a combat, or if not combat, then another secondary role play scenario, depending on how the characters approach the situation. Yeah, for one shots, that is the way I also prefer to keep it. For other like general campaigns, I do enjoy like having a little bit more combat, simply because your characters technically in D&D built around mostly combat, right? Like all their features and stuff are meant to enhance combat. Of course, there are some which enhance roleplay situations as well. But for the majority of the characters, it's mostly like spells which do damage, and these are the weapons you pick and stuff like that. So I like to involve combat a fair amount, since that's what you are technically, in quotes, meant to be doing with your character stats.
Can I add something very quickly?
Please.
So exactly what Anurag and Alex have said. If I'm playing, if I'm running a game for someone that I don't know very well, or if playing online, then yes, a little bit of everything just to see what uh, would interest them. But if I know them well, or if I get a chance to like, have a session zero with them, I'll ask them what they want to run, and that might factor into it, because I know like this is from personal experience. I've run a game where my players were like, we just want to fight, we just want to have combat. So like, okay, we'll just put you into an arena and you just you run combat for 3 hours. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but if that's something that your players want to do, and if that's something you have fun running, that should definitely be like a factor to consider when you're like writing an adventure.
If I could also add, I'm so sorry, you would like to go ahead?
No. I just unmuted myself for a second.
Ricky, please go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one important factor is also the way you're running it, in the sense that I have mostly run a lot of my games during the pandemic, over Skype or Discord, right? I am not very good with Roll20. I don't know how to do it. So what has ended up happening is that two things I have learned is that exploration is terrible in the, like, when you're running a game on the theater of the mind sort of deal. Like what, like there's only so many different ways you can describe a corridor, like in a dungeon, especially if you're going underground or somewhere. And I've also realized that combat takes a lot more time than it would in a campaign where you're sitting face to face with other people, especially if you have newer players around who, like, you need to somewhat like let them like learn through doing sometimes. So I've learned that like if it's an in-person game, yes, you need to, like, I think incorporating all three is it's the true D&D experience, right? You want the players to explore or like experience all of it. But when you have certain constraints, I think it's completely okay for DMs to sort of junk one aspect, or like focus less on one aspect, given the limitations of what you're working with. Because you can still have a fun game even if like some of those aspects aren't there, by making sure that the other aspects are done better, so to speak, or like more fleshed out.
Definitely.
Can I add a quick little
Please.
it's a feel for your players, see what they like more, and I think if they like exploration more, then more towards that side of uh, the TTRPG side. But if they do like combat more, present them more tactical combat where they are actually enjoying this. Instead of throwing in a bunch of combat and encounters at them, give them snippets of encounter where they're actually having to think around, defeat a bad, defeat a bad evil. It's a delicate balance, but once you're comfortable with your players, you pick up on it, and once that harmony is set, games are just smooth.
I also think. Sorry, Alex, did you want to add anything?
Just that, like, once you, at least in a campaign, once you start like getting, said, comfortable with your players, you can have sessions where like you only focus on one pillar of the game. You can have sessions which are just literally only shopping sessions, just because that's what your players wanted to do at that point in time, or sessions which are just pure combat, just straight up 5 hours of combat, just because that's what ended up happening. You don't have to necessarily have all three pillars present in every session. It's not always going to work out like that anyways.
I also just one of the things that came to mind is that getting a feel for your players is of course one big part that everyone's kind of mentioned. But also it's a there's a fine balance. I think that fine balance thing is, I think, very tricky because it going by just feel can be difficult. So often asking your players is, I think, another tool that I would just want to throw out there. Like, hey, are you enjoying all the combat, or do you want to see more role play? I think Stars and Wishes, for example, is just a great tool to get a feel for that, right? Don't try to just instinctively know. Maybe just ask your players. And the other thing that I thought, just when I was listening to all of you, which I feel like should be added, is that wow, my brain just randomly drew a blank. Does anyone else want to add anything while I quickly try to remember? No?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Can I just
There we
add
go.
like one very quick thing?
Please.
There's always this hesitation for like when I was first starting out, that I don't want to like force my players into doing exactly as per what I have planned in my adventure. Like I want to make it too railroady. I mean, it's not that big of fear if your most adventures are railroady. Like you're the DM, you're telling a story. You have your ideas from the players, you have the hooks from the players, you have the themes that the players have bought into. But at the end of the day, it's your story. So very few games are like true sandboxing. If your adventure is railroady, there's no harm in it. There's no stigma against being railroady. If you want to push your players in a certain direction, and they don't want to go there, that's a different thing. Then you can like ask them out of table, like why you don't want to go there, or tell them that look, I don't have anything else prepared here. We can like pause and like stop and come back, and I'll prepare something for what you want to explore. But yeah, I mean, like there's nothing wrong with being railroady as such, as long as your players are having fun with your adventure. And you are having fun running jitters.
Adding on to what Siva said, and also answering Grimoire's question in the chat. So this one, a railroading session, even for my Curse of Start campaign, I specifically mentioned to my players that first few sessions will be a little railroady just to get the whole story on track. And once the whole story is on track, you can do whatever you want. I'll keep those things prepared, and in case something is not prepared, I'll inform you people. So yeah, railroading is sometimes it's there's no other option, and sometimes you can do it, and players would be okay with it as long as they're having fun.
And just talk to them outside. Like, if they want to explore something else, you can always say that, I need time to prepare this and come back to it. Yeah.
Exactly. If the players feel that you are a good DM, they will definitely stay with you on this. They would definitely want to explore that, and they'll definitely have the patience for that.
I think a tool that comes to mind when you guys mention about keeping your players interested in anything is also making it directly somehow related to the character, right? If the character has a personal investment in the combat or in the role play or in the exploration, they're far more likely to want to do it than if it's just something that's a quest that's been handed to them, but they have no other reason except because the DM put it in front of them, right? So I think another layer of distinction that allows us to kind of get the players to get it more invested in an adventure. Would you guys agree, disagree? What do you think?
Definitely would agree. Definitely would agree on this.
Alex?
Yeah, 100%. Like if you give your players that like personal motivation to go ahead and complete this adventure, it just makes it so much more because they'll bring in aspects that you did not expect as well through like some role play or through making some decisions that you didn't expect them to make. It's just so much better if your players are tied to like the adventure at hand.
And like sometimes the easiest part is that the players give you this. Like, they'll give you a story saying that, oh, my character came from this place and they ran away from home, and they'll give you all that in the backstory, right? So just listen to them, pull ideas from there, and then tie in personal connections, and they will be hooked on right away.
Exactly. It just the most important part of the storytelling is getting your backstories from your character. Even if it isn't as long as you want it to be or rich, finding products for them to get invested, you have it in your hands. You have your players' backstories. That's the all pressure you need for a good story and for them to be invested in.
So one of the questions that just came in is how do you direct and bring the party towards a common goal when everyone comes in with varied energies every session? So like no two sessions are alike, everyone's coming in, they have different vibes. How do you get them all to kind of just sync up their feelings?
Well, I usually go with you already knew each other. You are already a well-known party in the area. So you, if one is doing it, the other would obviously follow, like, because they would know what is good for the party, right? So I would just go with you already know each other and you're well-known in the area. I think that actually gets the party going.
So if I could just repeat what I said earlier a little bit. So the opening I like to use is that you haven't you have been called for a job or you have been called for an adventure, because it gives them a common goal at the start, right? So if it's a one shot, it immediately gives them a source to be invested in or a common goal for them to all work together, be it for any reason, right? So people who want glory can say I'm doing it for the glory. Well, people who want money you can have the NPC offer them a lot of money as a reward for the job. Basically, having a common goal straight away. And if it's a campaign, so you hope that once you do that in your first session, from the second session onwards, is the inter group dynamics take over a little bit. So as long as you can get a hook with at least a couple of players or even one player, uh, the party would go along with it, is what I would say generally.
Question from Helm. I'm not. How do you prepare for predetermined time set for each session or one shot? So, for example, you have 2 hours or 3 hours, and you got to wrap it up. What do you do? What are some tools that you can use, or tips or hacks you can use to keep it moving?
I just use a clock. Like I literally have my phone and clock and just keep it out there, and like so that I know what my time limit is. And if I get close to the end and I need to cut out the middle section, I will cut out the middle section. Like just jump straight into Arc 1, the players get together, they find some minor challenges. Arc 2 leads them to some bigger challenges. Arc 3 leads to the main villain. I'll just drop the minor challenge, the middle challenge.
What I usually go for, my longest session ran for, I think, 7. It ran from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. So that was my longest session ever. And I couldn't manage the time then properly. But usually, what I do is like Shiva said, have divide it into arcs and remove a few arcs. And if you think a fight is actually going on for too long, you could have the monster being summoned by the BBEG, or like just be afraid and giving up. Those kind of stuff also works.
Amazing. Another one that we have, if I may move, is this has kind of been answered before, which was we were talking about writing an adventure for yourself as opposed to writing one that others can use. But they also want to know is what is the difference between preparing a homebrewed adventure uh, versus writing it out for someone else to run it? Like, how do we? Sure, we keep in mind that it needs to be easy, readable. But what are some key breaks that you need to include in a published adventure? Maybe some style guide tips. Those would be useful.
Yeah, Alika's probably the best person to.
If you want to take that,
I mean, I've only written like 3 or something, guys. Come on.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember much. No, it's not. I don't remember much about style guides, but I do like write out little like paragraphs of descriptions for like one-shot adventures if I'm writing for someone else. Just because then it's easier for them to read out to people. There are people who prefer to read out descriptions rather than like come up with it on the spot. Once in a while, I'll include dialogues. I'll do like NPC profiles for like the main NPCs that are there in the adventure. So it will, it'll have like their name, if they have any statistics like, or if, like their commoner or knight or whatever, it'll have a small statistic block, and it'll have like their motivation, their goal, and their fear. So that just kind of helps with running the NPC effectively. What else? I have like a glossary at the back with all the monsters and items that I'm trying to think of anything else that I'd added. I thought of something, but I've forgotten it. Too bad.
I would definitely like this is optional if you're writing something for another DM. Not all adventures, not all published models do this, but I would definitely include like one section of what do you do when the player chooses between two obvious or three obvious choices. Like you obviously can't preempt everything that a player will do, but if there are like
Right.
3 or 4 obvious choices, and you tell the DM, right, that if they do A, then these are the consequences. If they do B, these are the consequences. If they do C, the DM may or may not follow, but it helps to at least like clear it up and say that okay, if this happens, they're not underprepared.
Yeah, the DM should like have as much idea as you have about like what are the possibilities that the players can end up doing. So if you have something where the players end up stalemating with the enemy, the players destroy the enemy, the players ally with the enemy, you kind of have to come up with the scenarios for all of them, even if it's just like a short paragraph, and put that in just so that the DM who is running this, who may not be 100% familiar with your characters, can, at least improvise based off like a springboard that you provide.
There we go. Yes, love to hear your thoughts on the character meets in a tavern way of going about beginning an adventure. It's a classic, some would argue a cliche even. But have you used it? Does it work for you? And if not, what are the alternatives that you suggest? We did touch upon this a little bit, but yeah, you're more than welcome to expand on it. What's an alternative to meeting in a tavern? And if you do use meeting in a tavern, what do you do to make it work?
I've used you meet in a
Yeah, go ahead.
tavern so many times that I've even lost count. Uh, but the other things that I've used were you've been raised from the dead, you've been, summoned by this so and so person. You've been you are prisoners of war. Those kind of stuff. But yeah, Tavern is just a classic. Wouldn't say it's a cliche.
I mean,
Yeah, go.
it's a classic for a reason, right? Because it works every time. It
Exactly.
works well every time. So hey, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah, 100% agree because the reason it works is because it gives you like a starting point for role playing. I know like so many people who like start playing TTRPGs or even say like D&D. They don't like they've never role played before, or they never played a role playing before, or even if they have, a tavern setting is easy. It's quick to jump into. It's a familiar setting, and it's easy to role play in a tavern. So if you want to like skip the tavern and go to something else, just the principles, as long as they're the same, like you meet in a shopping mall. Yeah, you can role play meeting in a shopping mall. You meet in a carnival. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
the idea is to give you like a springboard to get into character. So tavern works.
I think my favorite
It's a nice open
starting point
social
is
place with lots of
Exactly.
I think my favorite place is festivals, where things are happening.
yeah.
There are games being run. There are people shopping. Big tents put up where people are setting up their wares. Basically, a shopping episode mixed with a festive season around it.
Uh,
Where the players have a genuine good time and not too stressed
Yeah.
about it. Just get them settled in. That's a very good start to any story.
if you're doing a one shot and you're time strapped, then you would want to like start everybody together and festival, tavern, like just start in a closed space or where they're proximate to each other. You don't want to like start in all over the town and just spend like the first one third of your session just getting people together if you're time strapped.
Is that I'm a big fan of tavern, but again, if you have a very short time, also a very nice thing is like Andrex said, you can have players who already know each other. Or I'm a big fan of the Skyrim opening, basically that you are basically being taken somewhere as prisoners or whatever. This is also very classic, and it provides for different things based on what you need for your first session of the game, basically. Also, I have to leave, so thank you so much. This has been a wonderful time. Thank you for letting me speak for about a hobby that I truly love and being able to share this space with so many amazing people. And thank you, Shivam, for moderating this so well. And thank you, everyone on the panel, for being you, basically. Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you, Ricky.
Bye.
Appreciate having
Thanks for
you
Thank you,
here.
Ricky.
joining.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Awesome. Um, all right. I want to throw out some other links, if you guys don't mind, that are just useful tools because I'm all a fan of Cobalt Fight Club's already been mentioned. If you're doing 5e, that's pretty useful. There is also a G sheet called G Sheet 2 version 2.1. So if you're not using D&D Beyond and you're not using Roll20, this is an automated character sheet that exists in Google Sheets, and you can insert any character, race, or class on there, and it will do a lot of the math for you. So that's a pretty neat one. You can just literally Google G Sheet 5e version 2.1, and that's the one to go with. I'm also gonna plug. Uh, ooh, if you guys
And
don't use, yeah, sorry.
I mean, to plug the software, if
Yeah.
people are a bit tech savvy,
Mhm.
something called Aurora
Mm.
Character Builder, has literally everything from all the previous source books to all the latest ones. It has a GitHub resource where you can download all the books, and it's maintained by a community, so never get wrong with it.
Amazing.
May I also plug like there are a bunch of excellent battle map makers, and a lot of them offer their maps for free or like a very small nominal Patreon amount. But I'll plug 2 Minute Tabletop. Great maps.
And
Also, if you want like printable minis, and not like 3D printable ones, but like paper printable minis, because I used to use those back in the day when I played IRL, and they were really fun. There's a site called Printable Heroes or Trash Mob Minis on Twitter. They do great artwork for little creatures and stuff, which you can just like print out and use like little standees. It's great.
And also, you could even go into DM's Guild or any of those websites. You have, books that offer you to, pay what you want. You could pay them a small amount, and you could get really good adventures out of that.
Yeah.
Yep, Drive Through RPG and DM Scale both.
Yeah, keep an eye out for their bundles of adventures, because that's when like they put like a whole bunch of adventures into one bundle and usually put it at a massive discount. So if you're looking for bang for your buck, then just keep an eye out for those and you'll find like loads of great adventures and resources as well. They have like lots of resources on DM's Guild as well.
Agreed. What about if I may ask, what about some resources for non-D&D stuff? Because that's also, or even system agnostic, right? There's adventures that are system agnostic that you can apply to any system or any game you want. If you guys have any resources for that, it's always useful.
So I I get a lot of this inspirations from Drive Through RPG. I think DM's Guild is the D&D version, and Drive Through RPG is the same for non-D&D settings, and you get a lot of system agnostic stuff, like 100 things you'll find in a college, or 100 things you'll find in a magic academy. That There are like many books like these. There are like random maps that you can use across systems, um, ideas for adventures, ideas for villains. Uh, Again, system agnostic, that you would find on Drive Through RPG.
I 100% agree over there. Panelists, I just want to take a moment. I would like to just quickly ask all of you to, just if you want to plug anything, now's your chance. So I'll just go run. Alex, do you want to plug anything? Do you want to say anything? Just what's your sign out?
You can follow me on Twitter for bad opinions and Instagram for art at Cape Fox Alex. That's it. I have no other plugs at the moment. But hopefully something soon.
Amazing. Anorak.
Um, I don't have anything related to art, but you're all welcome to check out my podcast. Yeah, it's called Conundrum Archives. It's solely based on curiosity. So anyone who's interested into conspiracy theories, mythology, and everything, that's your go-to.
Wow. Cool.
I'll post the link in the chat.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Syed.
Well, okay, I'm going to plug in a bit of sharing of Siva's Mask game and Wonder Room, and I can be found on Twitter and Twitter as Linuxes, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr as Linuxes. I post in homebrew stuff and movie stuff and combat related stuff. It's me.
Amazing. Siva.
Okay, hello. You can find me on Twitter. It's Siva SIVA0714 on Twitter, and the only thing to promote is the adventure that I published. It's on the pinned tweet, and yes, as Syed mentioned, I do run an open table PBTA campaign here on Desi server. So if you're interested to join and don your cape and cowl, please jump onto the server, ping me, find me. There's always space for many more superheroes in this campaign.
Adventures are so good, guys. You gotta try them.
I'll highly recommend it. They're so fun.
Amazing.
And
I do recommend that.
I'm just collecting all the panelists here to join in
Yes.
my campaign now.
Oh,
Amazing.
and I also forgot.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to give out my Instagram, which is anorak _97. There. Yeah, if anyone wants to actually, there's not much to see on it, but yeah, I'll be up for a chat anytime.
Great. Ricky, if we can hear from you, please.
I don't really have much to plug. You can find me on Instagram at Panda. I just want to say, please, everyone, if you need to go to therapy, even if you don't need to go to therapy.
That's a fair statement to make. I would say therapy is very amazing. Get a good professional to help you out in these tough times that we call the post-pandemic life. Thank you all. Good night.